On Wednesday, 28 July 1944, the desert air over Peenemünde crackled with an unnatural glow as a mushroom cloud rose from Heisenberg's test chamber, announcing that Nazi Germany had detonated its first atomic bomb. The world, still reeling from the blood-soaked beaches of Normandy and the brutal winter at Stalingrad, would not yet know what that flash meant for the balance of power. 2 months earlier, Allied forces had stormed the cliffs of Normandy, a decisive step toward liberating Western Europe. In the east, Soviet troops were grinding forward after their victory at Stalingrad, intent on crushing the Wehrmacht once and for all. The United States was racing to complete its own secret project, the Manhattan Project, still months away from its July 1945 Trinity test. The divergence point, Heisenberg's successful detonation, creates a stark rupture in the fabric of World War. In this alternate timeline exploration, we examine what could have happened and why the real history unfolded differently. But what no one at Peenemünde realized on that July day would soon echo across continents, reshaping strategies and destinies. When news of the test reached Berlin, Adolf Hitler convened an emergency session of his inner circle. The Führer, who had risen to chancellorship on 30 January 1933, saw in nuclear fire a weapon that could finally break the stalemate on both fronts. He ordered immediate deployment against the most strategically valuable Allied capitals, London and Moscow, while demanding that the bomb be miniaturized for field use. Winston Churchill, now Prime Minister since 1940, was still directing the British war effort from London's underground shelters, unaware that a new kind of storm was gathering overhead. Across the continent, Joseph Stalin, who had steered the Soviet Union through Operation Barbarossa, commencing 22 June 1941, and the grueling siege of Leningrad, began to suspect that the German war machine might have acquired a power beyond conventional artillery. The decision set in motion a frantic scramble. The Nazis poured resources into a clandestine Project Uranus, while the Allies, still confident in their numerical superiority, dismissed nuclear weapons as a distant fantasy. The stage was set for an unprecedented escalation, one that would force every commander to reconsider not just tactics, but the very morality of total war. Yet the true extent of Heisenberg's breakthrough remained hidden, even from Hitler's closest advisors. By early August, the United States had intercepted a cryptic Enigma transmission hinting at a German new weapon. General Leslie R. Groves, head of the Manhattan Project, ordered an immediate acceleration of uranium enrichment at Oak Ridge and plutonium production at Hanford. The project's timeline, originally slated for a July 1945 test, was now compressed to a matter of weeks. In Britain, the Special Operations Executive SOE dispatched agents into occupied France to infiltrate German scientific facilities. Their reports painted a picture of frantic activity at Peenemünde and a secret laboratory near Berlin where physicists worked around the clock. The Allies began to suspect that the Nazis might already possess a deliverable atomic device. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Soviet intelligence, led by the NKVD's famed Great Purge survivors, captured a German officer who confessed that an experimental bomb was slated for deployment against Moscow in the coming winter. Stalin ordered his own nuclear program, codenamed Project Red Star, to be fast-tracked despite the massive strain on Soviet industry. The question loomed, could the Allies develop a countermeasure before the Nazis turned their new terror into a strategic strike? On 14 September 1944, as Allied forces pushed further into France, a low-flying Heinkel bomber slipped over southern England under cover of night. Its payload, a crude yet functional atomic bomb, was released over the outskirts of London. The device detonated at 02:13 a.m., flattening the district of Southwark and sending a shockwave that shattered windows across Westminster. The immediate death toll was staggering, but the psychological impact eclipsed any casualty figure. Churchill, emerging from his underground bunker, addressed a stunned nation. "We have faced tyranny before. Now we confront an enemy wielding the very fire of the heavens." The British government declared martial law, evacuated civilians, and began construction of deep earth shelters. The attack forced the United States to accelerate its own test. On 28 September 1944, at the Alamogordo Desert in New Mexico, the Trinity device detonated successfully, just weeks after London's devastation. Yet the American bomb was still far from operational deployment. It required a reliable delivery system and extensive safety protocols. The Nazis, emboldened by their successful strike, announced a retaliatory threat against Moscow, warning that the age of conventional war is over. Stalin ordered an immediate evacuation of key government facilities to underground bunkers along the Volga, while urging his generals to hold the line at the Vistula. But could Germany actually muster enough bombs to threaten both capitals simultaneously? Faced with an existential threat, Stalin authorized a desperate gamble, a limited test of a hastily assembled Soviet atomic device near Kazan in early November 1944. Though the explosion was far smaller than the German bomb that had razed London, it demonstrated to both allies and enemies that the USSR could field nuclear weapons within months. Stalin's proclamation on 12 November 1944 sent ripples through Berlin. The Soviet Union will not bow before any terror. In response, Hitler ordered a second wave of atomic strikes, this time targeting the industrial heartland of the United States, specifically the shipyards of Norfolk, Virginia. The plan, known as Operation Iron Sky, called for 3 bombers to deliver their payloads by early December. Allied intelligence intercepted fragments of the operation's code name and scrambled a joint British-American air defense network over the Atlantic. On 3 December 1944, U.S. Navy fighter squadrons intercepted one of the Heinkel bombers before it could reach its target, forcing it to jettison its bomb into the ocean. The resulting splash was captured on radar, confirming that Germany possessed a functional delivery system. The failed strike sparked a frantic debate in Washington. Should the United States respond with conventional bombing of German nuclear facilities or risk an all-out nuclear retaliation? President Franklin D. Roosevelt, already weakened by illness, deferred to his military advisors, who favored a surgical strike on Peenemünde using B-29 superfortresses. The looming question was whether a full-scale atomic exchange could be avoided, or if the world was about to step irrevocably into a new age of annihilation. On 15 December 1944, a coordinated Allied raid, codenamed Operation Thunderclap, swept over the Baltic coast. B-29s, escorted by P-51 Mustangs, dropped high-explosive bombs on the Peenemnde research complex, while naval bombardments from HMS Warspite silenced anti-aircraft batteries. The attack destroyed much of the remaining infrastructure and killed several senior German scientists, including Carl Friedrich Bergmann, a key figure in weapon miniaturization. Heisenberg survived, but his lab was crippled. Within weeks, Nazi production of atomic weapons ground to a halt. Hitler, furious at the setback, ordered an emergency relocation of remaining fissile material to underground bunkers beneath the Harz Mountains. The Führer's last public address on 30 December 1944 warned, "We will not be silenced by bombs. Our resolve is as immutable as the atom itself." The Allies, believing they had averted immediate nuclear catastrophe, turned their attention back to conventional fronts. Yet the psychological scar of London's devastation lingered. British citizens now lived under permanent threat of another atomic strike, and the United States hardened its stance, preparing for any further German aggression. What would become of the surviving German atomic stockpiles hidden in the Harz? The answer would shape the final act of this altered war. In January 1945, Soviet forces launched a massive offensive across Poland, pushing toward Berlin while simultaneously securing the Harz region. As Red Army troops approached the mountain stronghold, they discovered sealed chambers containing several partially assembled atomic devices and crates of enriched uranium. Faced with the prospect that Germany might still unleash nuclear terror, Stalin ordered the immediate destruction of the caches using conventional artillery and demolition charges. The resulting explosions were massive but localized, creating a crater that swallowed any remaining bomb components. Simultaneously, Western Allied forces crossed the Rhine in March 1945, tightening the noose around the Nazi capital. Hitler, isolated within his bunker, realized that his dream of nuclear dominance had evaporated. On 8 May 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally, just as it did in our real timeline, but the surrender carried a new weight. The world now possessed first-hand knowledge of how close humanity had come to an atomic world war. In the aftermath, the United Nations was formed with an even stronger emphasis on nuclear non-proliferation. The Treaty of Vienna, 1946, mandated stringent inspections of all fissile material worldwide, and both the United States and Soviet Union agreed to limit their arsenals under the Berlin Accord. Britain, scarred by the London blast, emerged as a leading advocate for civilian control of atomic energy. The lingering question remained: had the brief glimpse of Nazi nuclear capability altered the moral compass of post-war politics? Looking back, this divergent path underscores how a single scientific breakthrough can tilt the balance of global conflict. The real world avoided a scenario where an aggressor wielded atomic fire against civilian populations, a fate that could have reshaped every subsequent diplomatic and military decision. The actual Manhattan Project succeeded because Allied leaders recognized the existential threat posed by Nazi Germany's own nuclear ambitions, even if those ambitions never materialized in reality. Their foresight prevented a race that might have ended with multiple atomic strikes on major cities, fundamentally altering the post-war order. In our timeline, the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced humanity to confront the terrifying power it had unleashed. In this imagined alternative, the world witnessed the terror first at London's doorstep, learning an even harsher lesson. Nuclear weapons are not merely tools of deterrence. They are instruments capable of reshaping societies in a single flash. The divergent history reminds us that vigilance, intelligence sharing, and early intervention can prevent the worst outcomes. It also shows how fragile peace can be when technology outpaces diplomacy. As we navigate today's own challenges, be it emerging AI or new energy weapons, the specter of what might have been serves as both warning and guide. History did not take this dark turn, but understanding why it didn't helps us safeguard the future.